Oh no, you chip your knife? Don't freak out, you can fix yourself. I will show you how. Knifewear is here to make your experience with Japanese kitchen knives better. So please subscribe, hit the notification button so that you don't miss a video. And don't forget to check the links on the description for more products and videos. As you can see, I have a chip knife. This chip was actually caused by cutting into the chicken bones by Mike on a video on why is my knife chipping. If you want to check out the video, see that link below in the description. Fixing a chip knife is 3-step processes. 1 is to grind down whole chips. 2 is to thin the knife. A lot of people miss this step, but this is very important step and you'll find out why soon. And 3rd is finally to sharpen the edge. I'll show you how to sharpen the way that it doesn't chip as easy again as well. The first step is to grind the chips down. In order to do so, it needs a lot of heavy lifting. Best stones to do it is something like a Knifewear 220 stone, very coarse stone to grind that chips down very fast. Once you have your guide, set your knife at very aggressive angle. 45, 50, maybe 70 degrees. This way, you'll be able to grind your edge very, very fast. And do not worry about the edge angle. We'll fix it later. Before I start grinding all the chips, I just wanted to point out that how important it is to maintain at the same profile. Profile is this flat and how it carves naturally. If you messes up your profile, what could end up happening is to have, for example, very flat spot right here so that the knife doesn't roll as smooth. One trick that we use is to use the Sharpie to draw the line of the profile over the chip. This is not perfect, but this illustrates very well how much metal you have to actually remove. So this, you can use it as a guide to remove equivalent amount of steel from the heel where the chip is towards the tip as well. So as I mentioned earlier, put the knife on very aggressive angle like this. Do it slow but consistent. It's not race, you don't have to rush. Use lots of water. Try to grind as evenly from the heel to the tip as possible. So when you're pushing it down, you don't have to put lots of pressure. Let the stone do the work. All the back and forth action will do the job for you. Important tip is to sharpen or grind the steel evenly from both ends as well. So when you, for example, do 30 size, do 30 as well. As you can see, the chip had become so much smaller than previously was. Don't solely rely on markers that you put because this was too lot higher than where the chip end. But you want to also make sure you work from the heel to the tip as evenly. Check as frequently as possible so that you don't overgrind your steel. The chip has become so small that probably another 30 strokes will take this chip out. It is very important to take all the chips out using that coarsest stone that you have. Sometimes you have to go back to the very coarse stone after you thought you're finished, and that is not fun. Now all the chips were removed. and you think it's done. Not so fast. Because I was using this very coarse grit of stone and I was sharpening at very aggressive angle, the edge had become very thick. The bevel had become very thick. Many sharpeners finishes by simply removing the chips and sharpens them up. That causes knife to be very thick so that it doesn't glide into the food as smooth. So what it needs to be happening is to thin the whole bevel. By thinning the bevel, it will make the knife glide into the food so much smoother. Also, it will expose the core steel much better. So I'm going to start thinning my knife with using the 220 grit stone here. Before you go in that, you want to make sure your stone is completely flat by using a truing stone. Truing your stone is very important to keep your bevel nice and even. Now you can start thinning your knife. 220 grit, rest your knife flat on the stone, put your fingers, apply the pressure to the bevel, given a tiny bit of angle. Do start sharpen on the bevel back and forth. You can do this until the out-of-box thickness is attained. If you aren't quite sure, you can always test it on the carrots or potatoes. When you're thinning, when you're grinding the bevel, make sure you want to do it evenly throughout the bevel. This may be a little bit advanced technique, so you can work on this part. Stop, change the spot. This, change the spot. Okay, so now the first side is done. As you may be able to see, there isn't much blade road left along the edge as the other side. You can see about less than a millimeter reflection at the edge here. The way I sharpened to begin with, I was put in a very high angle. That's created this tiny blade road along the edge. I thin it until that blade road is almost completely gone. Now I'm off to the second side. You can certainly keep your knife on your dominant hand. I usually switch my hand when I'm thinning. It will make the bevel look better. If you were to keep your knife on your dominant hand or the same hand as the first side, you hold the knife like this. If you're ambidextrous enough to change your hand like myself, change it like this. It gives you the same result. Look may be a little bit different, but functionality, it will be the same. Okay, now I've thinned the knife enough. This is great, but you still see lots of deeper scratches on the blade. Now, it's not necessarily the prettiest. So I'm going to step up using the 1000 grit and ultimately using the 4000 grit to make this bevel look much prettier. So the technique is going to be the same. Put it flat on the bevel, apply the pressure lightly, move your pressure finger along the way. Again, as I said, if you have to do this, that, go for it. But I'm just gonna keep doing and then listen to the sound. It's so much more quieter. What I'm looking for with this particular Knifewear 1000 grit stone is the nice, even, consistent look along the bevel here. And make sure the deeper scratches that were created from the 220 grits are all gone. See, it's much more even on this side than this side. I'm going to keep working on the second side. Now the look on this side and this side is pretty even. So now I'm going to move up to a 4000 grit to basically give a little bit more nicer polish to the edge here. This is a bit different technique. I am going to just polish the core steel. So what I'm going to do is apply the pressure a little bit more closer to the edge. So you get to see this part polished up. So here, it's got a very beautiful contrast between the core steel, that's almost mirror polish, and this outside layer that is nice and smoky. Do it again on the other side. Again, put the pressure very close to the edge. Careful when you're doing it. As you can see, the core steel has shined up very nicely and keeping this part nice and smoky. This is so-called Kasumi finish. Now you completely remove the chips and thin out your knife. All you have to do from here is to simply sharpen it. What I'm going to start is actually this Knifewear 1000 grit stone. The reason why I didn't go back down all the way to 220 grit is that I have made this knife thin enough so that you don't have to work as much to put the edge back on. Ultimately, you can go back down to 220 grit if you like, but I decided to skip that step because 220 grit takes way too much steel off for this thickness of that knife. Before I set the angle on this knife, I want to point out that this knife was chipped a little bit bigger than I would like to see. So I want to make this knife a bit tougher than it used to be. What I'm going to do is usually we sharpen this at 15 degrees, about this angle from both sides. I'm going to put the edge that's about 20 degrees. That's a little bit bigger. That will ultimately make the knife a little bit more stronger. So again, very lightly back and forth from the tip to the heel. Do it until you raise a good size burr. Change that side. Then once you raise the burr on one side and the other, you want to de-burr it very lightly on a stone like this. After you strop your burrs off, you want to make sure you use your paper to test the edge to see if there's any chips left from the first grind. That is why it's very important to take all the chips out on the first stone. Otherwise, you notice at this step, then you have to go back all the way. Now, I'm going to move up to my finishing stone, which is 4000 grit. It's all the same, sharpen at 20 degrees, so I'm just going to sharpen at higher angle. Take the burr off. And at this last stage, I will be using that leather strop to take extra burrs off. This time, test is not if it's sharp, but how smooth the edge is. If you aren't happy with the smoothness that created, do extra polishing. Good. So there you have it. You've successfully repaired the chipped knife. Remember, thinning your knife is as important as removing the chips and sharpen them. I hope this video helped you fix your own knife. If you have any other problems that you want to solve by watching videos, leave the comment below. Like it if you enjoyed the video, and please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification button so that you don't miss a video. Happy sharpening, everyone!